Greetings, salutations, and good now. Let me pull the seat back a bit. I think this is the first time I'm doing a video in Bastia. So I'm in the hustle and the bustle of the busy city of Bastia. Today is the 16th of, the 17th. What? Time flying by, 17th. So this is the final weekend of the cancer season. So we're getting into the final decon, the final nosatras. I'm not really fluent with the word. The final degrees of the cancer season. So we know it could get a bit crazy. It looks like the what? You get you fast, boy. You get you fast. You went in the back.
I walk in there.
You walk in there.
Yeah, from the line.
Thanks a lot,
Right,
man.
weekend.
You too. So it's about a drink. Sweetheart, it's about the drink. No, use the sweetheart. Alright, guys. So it's Venus Day, and we're having a good time. We're feeling good, and we're spreading the love. Love you, darling. She just did me a blessing. A majoring. Alright, we'll never bill her. She did me a majoring. Okay, so we're in the final degrees. It's the 17th, so we know that it's about the 27th degree, and we know that the 27th, 28th, 29th degree could get a bit chaotic. And so I'm on my way to tech with myself. I'm going home to sort of chill out and continue to enjoy the summer. Now, as an observer of astrology, right? Because even though I'm making these videos sort of departing the wisdom that I have, we are all still observers, because that's how we attain wisdom, by observing and participating in what the sun, moon, and all the other planets are doing, right? So we are observing and participating, we are being influenced, and we are also lending our energy or forces to the planets, depending on how you look at it, right? But we are participating. And so based on what we are observing, we could see that in the summertime we are going through a sort of external debt where things are happening a lot faster, right? And even though we're experiencing longer days, it seems like we're running through these days quite fast, right? It's also a bit of a debt stage where even the nature, the plants that we're seeing, everything is blossoming fastly. Oh my days with that shape. Hold on, I'm not gonna tell any lie. I saw something that distracted me, so I needed to attend to that distraction. But now we're back. The summertime, based on my observation, is a bit of a debt phase. It's a bit more difficult to get things started, to cultivate. Again, coming from a gardening, agricultural standpoint, we call this the long days, and so it's a bit more difficult to cultivate. We are having the fruits ripening up as well, and so it's almost like they're having their final burst of energy before going back into maybe like a vegetative state, right? So their last flowering is like they're giving their last bit of energy back to the sun, or using that last bit of energy to produce a fruit that has seed that allows them to reproduce. So it's almost like an external debt. But internally, especially because we had this new moon in Cancer, we know that we're stepping into a new personality, a new conscious awareness, stepping into new endeavors on the miniature scale, even though on the macro of this micro, meaning the small portion that we call the summer, we are experiencing a certain level of transformation or a certain level of shedding away, right? So yes, we do have fruits. Everything seems to be blossoming on the outside, but we still are going to go pick those fruits and eat them. And so, it's almost like, Cancer season, the fruits are the home, they're being provided for us. And then in the Leo phase, we're going to be able to harvest them. And then Virgo, you know, preparing again, to plant seeds for the fall. And so in the Caribbean, we have an interesting zodiacal system where spring is more like I don't want to say spring is more like summer, but winter is more like the spring is more like the summer is more like a winter, a total death, and the fall is more like the spring. It's weird. We have a different system, or a slightly deferred, a slightly altered system, but nevertheless it corresponds nicely, with the overall layout of how astrology is, and that's the magical thing. Anyway, so right now, Sun in Cancer, late degrees, Moon is in Leo, so the Moon wants to express, our creativity, wants to be a part of this grand stage, wants to, fixate at fire, and so being fixated in how you could express yourself, or the things that you're confident or comfortable expressing to the world. And so right now we could hog the stage, right, and try to be the superstar, be egotistical, it's all about me, or you could be, a nice collaborator. So even if you are the star at the moment, you still leave room for other people to shine, and express themselves. And so it's a good time for creativity, for passion. I mean, it's Friday, Venus Day, love and appreciation, beauty with a Leo moon. And so we could see people going out, enjoying things, enjoying music, enjoying a drink, sort of indulging themselves a bit, as expected on a Friday. But also, Moon being in Leo, we have something to show to the world, right? Something that we want to express, something that we may be passionate about, that Moon is reacting or responding to, and it's playing out in a Cancerian type of way, where it may happen in the private life, or we might be a bit passive, we might be a bit protective, or we might be passionate about attending to our emotional stability and security. So some people taking all of that passion to really put it into work, or trying to put it into gaining some sort of emotional stability, which could look, or we could try to attain that in physical ways, so working extra hours, working extra hard, second job on the weekend, or just playing defense, right? I'm not gonna go out and spend or indulge or anything like that on this weekend. And so we have all of those energies. We also have some major placements. We got Jupiter opposing Pluto retrograde, and this one is big over this weekend. And so we know that Jupiter is abundance, good fortune, good luck. It expands situations and things, expands operations, make things larger. It's benefic, right? And so it brings blessings or majorings, and it expands and makes things bigger. However, it's opposing Pluto, right? Which is, I don't want to say the opposite, because Pluto is in its own realm, its own feel, its own energy. But Pluto is sort of like a destroyer. It seeks power and control. It likes to go to the depths of situations and operations. And so Jupiter is trying to expand things, whereas Pluto retrograde is trying to destroy and break down things and get to the deep core, to make sure that everything down below is safe and secure and sturdy, and is built on truth, right, and on a solid foundation. And so there's going to be a bit of a push and pull between your personal expansion in Leo, what you personally could contribute to the collective, versus Pluto in retrograde, which is kind of reshaping the collective conscious. And so there's a sort of tug of war there. Pluto being in Aquarius again, dealing with the collective, the best wishes that could, come out of all of the networks, associations, and affiliations that you have, and your forward, progressive thinking attitude, right? Whereas Jupiter in Leo is like, okay, I'm here, I'm in the now. We don't need to think forward, right? We don't need to think in the future. We just need to be present in this fixated moment in time and, fully indulge in the present moment and try to expand what's happening now. Whereas Pluto wants to, dwell Aquarius rather, and Pluto being there wants to take power and control over, maybe things in the now that could affect a greater future, right? So for me personally, I look at it as a clash between the now and the future, which would be Jupiter in Leo. Cancer is going to slowly be in Leo, so more indication as to the now, whereas Aquarius season, that's all the way next February, right? And so Pluto is probably pending or brewing things that could come to fruition maybe in February, because it's so far away, Pluto. But Jupiter again is that of expansion, and then Sun is going to conjunct or going to Leo shortly, and so that's when maybe we could see the fruition of what Jupiter is bringing expansion to, or maybe Sun is going to bring more illumination to what's happening there. Moreover, Mercury is in retrograde, still sliding backwards in Cancer, so our thinking and communicating is a bit more inward. Our expressions might be a bit more passive, a bit delayed. However, Cancer, the sign of the moon, the Sun seems to do well here, maybe not so much in the last degrees. However, Mercury, isn't doing well here, but I don't know, this season just seems blessed. I don't want to use blessed, but we're receiving these stuffs from the planet, so I guess we are less, right? Not me, y'all, but and not my down to the bone subscribers or viewers, right? We're not less, we're always major. That's why it's called major astrology. So I'm going to cut it short here, because I was just kind of going off of the top. It's the last weekend, so why not make a few videos, getting in the last remnants and just helping to project my mind. We know where all of the planets are. Saturn and Neptune are in Aries. I think Neptune is still a bit retrograde, bringing in a bit of fog and confusion in Aries, the spark, what we really want to spark and bring forth into the world. Cardinal fire, so initiating passion, initiating what we're motivated about, initiating action. Saturn is their boundaries and restrictions, so Saturn is tearing things up at the same time. So all of the planets, they tell a different story, and how they configure and combine in your specific chart, I think that's the caveat, right? Because what's happening, we could transmute it, we could transcend it, we could know how to bounce and pivot, but depending on how it's personally affecting our placements, that tells us where we have certain gifts, power, control, and it shows us where the fight is going to be a bit more difficult than in other aspects, and maybe to other people. Anyway, major farewell until we meet or greet again. I hope you found this helpful, useful, or at the very least entertaining. I'm about to indulge in some BFC and then probably head to my casa. Hope you guys enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you guys soon.